What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing frightening encounters with the road troll. And by the end of this, you may not be convinced that that's what we're dealing with here, but that's what I thought the beauty of this was to see what you guys think is going on here. So without further ado, on this channel, I've covered so much of the strange, bizarre, and even the twisted, sick, and demonic. And just when I think I can't get any stranger or more terrifying, I come across something else that I simply cannot resist researching more into and bringing to your attention. As always, let me know if you find this interesting and if you like it, and I'll bring you more of it in the future. We've discussed encounters with truckers on the road and creepy trails from the Appalachian Trail. We've even discussed a race of ancient fae who seem to congregate in one specific city in the United States. I've come across something today that I just had to look into. Trolls are something that I've almost always had an issue with as far as infestations, and a lot of the time when I was younger, I thought they were just a normal thing that everyone dealt with on a pretty regular basis. Obviously, I know now that that isn't the case, and since exploring the Fae and looking into them and their many realms and species, I know better. Since coming into this community, being a creator on this platform, I have come to know trolls as something altogether and entirely different. Either way, it's not a pleasant experience when dealing with them. I was looking for more encounters from truckers of the paranormal sort and came across something called road trolls. The more I dug into it, the deeper the rabbit hole became, and of course, I couldn't help myself. Driving along remote roads for long stretches of time can be somewhat surreal. I mean, picture it, just you and the road at all hours of the night, and sometimes seemingly nonstop darkness that one encounters when driving these remote and desolate places and roads. I tip my hat to truckers, and actually one of my biggest regrets is not taking a job like that when I had the chance. I think I would absolutely love it, maybe someday. However, after all of the paranormal encounters I've come across from truckers and other people out there in the dead of night just trying to work and make a living, I go back and forth with it. It just keeps getting weirder and weirder. There are just too many tales I've read and been told of things that come out of the seemingly endless abyss of darkness, and most, if not all of the time, it's unexplainable. At the risk of rambling just a little bit, I mean, imagine the horror, shock, and fear that would grip you if you were out there alone in the dead of the black of night, and something unknown and possibly evil crept out of that blackness and you couldn't explain it. Who would you run to? Where would you hide? Even more terrifying is the question, what could or would you possibly be able to do about it? How would you reconcile yourself to whatever it was? Keep these questions in mind as we go through these encounters, and as you sit and maybe close your eyes to possibly envision these encounters and imagine bearing witness to them firsthand. Here it is. I don't know how else to present this to you except to call it what it's supposed to be. Road trolls. Author Jerry Coleman wrote about this phenomenon extensively in his books Strange Highways and More Strange Highways. And I read these books and I think they're amazing. I definitely recommend them if you get a chance to read them. This phenomenon is a rather odd one and only happens and comes up every so often, but when it does, it's just so terrifying because it deals with so many unknowns. There's report after report after report coming in of encounters with these hairy, troll-like creatures that allegedly prowl the world's highways, mostly and mainly seen by truckers in the dead of the night, and usually when they're so tired, all of the road seems to mesh together, and the days and nights possibly do the same. The darkened and desolate highways of the southern and midwestern parts of the United States are especially prone to reports of these encounters. This bizarre creature is often described as hulking and hairy, a humanoid of some sort which is almost always dressed in disgustingly filthy and tattered old clothes, but the craziest and perhaps the most frightening is the fact that it always is said to have one wooden pegged leg, which makes it, because of the darkness of the night, seem like some sort of drifter, grifter, or hitchhiker who just isn't putting out his thumb. However, when the trucker or victim or witness, whatever it is you want to call them, gets close enough to realize that this is not a person at all, but some kind of monstrous creature. Again, I ask, what would you do? Let's have a look now at some of the encounters I came across and see how they reacted and what they did when they came across this mysterious beast/figure on the side of the dark and desolate roads of America. So, There was a rash of sightings, and the first sightings to be reported were a part of this rash of sightings in 1981, though I'm sure, as I am with pretty much everything else I cover, that this was going on long before the written word and definitely long before the internet. A trucker from Effingham, Illinois named Gary Durbin was traveling through an extremely remote stretch of road which went through Tyson Mountain in Arkansas, which is located just east of the Ouachita National Forest, and he was headed to Chicago and carrying a load of chickens. I don't know if I pronounced Ouachita right, O-U-A-C-H-I-T-A. Correct me in the comments respectfully if I got it wrong. A lot of hairpin turns on even more unlit, dark country back roads. Even the highways were narrow and seemed to be unusually dark. However, it was on one of these desolate and black dark roads where he saw on the side of the road as he drove past a very hairy looking and very disheveled homeless man. Or so that's what it looked like to him at first glance. This peg-legged and dirty stranger was standing, looking lost and forlornly at the very edge of one of these aforementioned treacherous turns. Gary immediately thought to himself that the man must have a death wish, and also that it was a, quote, real mountain man, end quote, who probably didn't fear much, including being wrecked by a semi, because he was standing too close to the turn point on a dark hairpin turn road. While he found it strange and definitely thought the man was odd looking, he really didn't give it much thought. Not at first. A few miles down the road was a little truck stop where Gary pulled over and grabbed himself a cup of coffee before returning back to the road, which was now Highway I-55, so Interstate 55. He took the interstate into Missouri and stopped again for another cup of coffee at a little shop on the side of the road. As he pulled out of this rest area, he was absolutely shocked at what he saw. There, on the side of this road, hundreds if not thousands of miles away, was the same peg-legged, hairy, and disheveled mountain man stranger with a death wish as he had seen way back there at least a full state back away. He was a reasonable man and immediately thought to himself that this strange man must have hitched a ride. After all, there was no other reasonable or rational explanation as to how he had gotten so far ahead of Gary when he was walking without both legs, like he had a peg leg. I mean, there are so many reasons why, without the assumption of hitchhiking, that this didn't make any sense at all. Nevertheless, this made Gary so uncomfortable running into this mysterious and strange-looking stranger twice in one night that he tried desperately to put it out of his head. This would be no easy thing to do because over the stretch of the next few years, he would claim to see the same creature/man figure at least 5 times across multiple states. Texas, Arkansas, southern Missouri, northern Florida, and Mississippi. This is how he describes it all. Quote, he stands a good 6 feet to 6 foot 5 inches tall. His peg is just below his right knee. Made of wood, it looks. Always seen by the roads towards the evening, just past a rest area or truck stop leading towards the road, only moving his head a little. Very long hair and beard, light brown in color, covering his entire face, except the eyes. Old type clothes, ripped and torn. Seems like the same clothes every time. The creature carries a little hobo type pouch with him always, end quote. According to author Jerry Coleman, many other truckers have seen the exact same entity all along and across the highways of the United States, mainly in the above-mentioned areas, but sometimes further east or west. In every single report, the description of the quote-unquote stranger is always exactly the same, almost never veering on any single small detail. He says in his book, quote, other drivers I interviewed admit to seeing peg leg as well. In a truck stop south of Dallas, Texas, one driver told me of a peg-legged man he saw next to an interstate split outside of St. Louis. Another truck driver interviewed in Atlanta swears he saw a peg-legged hairy man standing just a quarter mile from a way station in Florida. Is peg-leg a wild man, Bigfoot, road troll, a driver's road angel, or simply a traveling gent we've termed a hobo, end quote. In 1983, Jerry interviewed a woman only known as Barb from Des Plaines, Illinois, who told him all about a terrifying encounter she had had with the same figure/entity that we are calling the road troll and who Gary Durbin thought was a weird-looking mountain man/hitchhiker. Barb explained that she had traveled to Alabama by car to visit her sister and made it to her destination without incident. Once she got there, she and her sister decided to go to the mall in the area which was located near a place called Green Pond on Interstate 20 and Interstate 59, and again, they traveled in their personal vehicle. Barb said on the way there, she and her sister saw there on the side of the highway, quote, a wild-looking man, end quote, who she described as being approximately 6 feet tall with long, stringy, and dirty hair that fell into into his face and nearly covered it. She described his clothes as looking as though, quote, a car had dragged him, end quote, and of course, the wooden peg right leg. She said, quote, the man or whatever it was just looked at us. A look of curiosity, I'd call it. We both agreed it had a wooden leg or walking stick in front of its leg. We were not sure. I felt guilty that we didn't call the police to check it out. After seeing the creature or whatever it was, it like totally changed our plans. We didn't go to the mall as planned. Instead, so shaken and concerned, we stopped at a nearby coffee shop and sat quietly composing ourselves, end quote. She would later say that the experience wasn't so much scary as it was strange. She felt so very strongly that this man/entity was some sort of harbinger of doom like the Mothman and was there to tell of some coming disaster or doom. She told Jerry Coleman in the interview that when they left for home, where they ended up arriving 3 hours earlier than they had planned to, they found that her sister, whom she had just visited's son, so she and her sister get back to her sister's house. This is worded a little weird. And they come to find that this Barb's nephew, so her sister's son, had fallen out of a tree and had broken his leg so severely that a piece of the bone was left sticking out of his skin and his pants. Ugh. The bleeding was profuse, and she immediately thought back to the encounter with the odd homeless hitchhiker and thought this is what he had been warning her of, possibly considering the peg leg. Pure speculation there on my part, but I'm thinking the kid broke his leg, the peg leg, I don't know. Because she and her sister had gotten home earlier than planned due to the ominous encounter with the hairy and bizarre stranger, they were able to rush him to the emergency room before possibly he bled out. In the winter of 1988, a trucker going by the handle Gunslinger was driving along Interstate 255, headed to Chicago, Illinois, hauling a load. When he was approximately 12 to 14 miles away from Alton, Illinois, he claims to have seen what he described as a hulking, hairy-looking man in unkempt clothes hobbling on a peg leg on the side of the road. The figure's appearance was so incredibly bizarre that Gunslinger felt the need to slow down his truck as he passed by to get a better look at the man/entity. This is when he realized it was all much more strange and bizarre than he had originally thought. He explains, quote, it stood well over 6 feet tall, maybe even 7 foot tall, long hair that covered its face and arms. The creature had a peg leg just below the right knee and was wearing very out-of-date, torn-up clothes. It didn't move until the truck got right up to it. I was going fairly slow and got an excellent look at it. I honestly didn't think it was real, but then it turned its head and looked my way. I'm not sure what I saw. Thoughts of a wild, weird creature quickly crossed my mind. I am sure it was no ordinary hitchhiking man, end quote. In the year 2000, there were at least 2 separate sightings of this hairy stranger reported. The first happened in March when a truck driver named Brad Royalty was driving outside of Big Cabin, Oklahoma, and he claims to have seen a huge peg-legged man with hair all over his body standing along Interstate 44 right outside the town limits. He said, quote, the thing was tall and hairy and had a wooden leg. I first thought it was a bum, but it freaked me out. It just stared at me, end quote. The second encounter was reported in the summer of that year by a man who would only call himself Doug and who was part of a trucker team with his unnamed wife, both claiming to have seen it in Boonville, Missouri. Doug said of the experience, quote, the man or whatever it was didn't even act like he was hitchhiking or doing anything. No vehicles were broken down within miles, and to be honest, it looked like a huge scarecrow. It had an artificial leg and a lot of hair, end quote. Sightings continued and were being reported at a pretty high rate. In June of 2003, a pastor named Jim Washington was driving to a church service in Tennessee when he saw what he described as a massive, hulking, hairy man with a peg leg limping along Interstate 181 just outside of Unicoi. Being a man of God, Pastor Jim decided that the man may be down on his luck and chose to turn and go back to see if he could offer him any assistance. But when he got back to the spot where he had seen the stranger, just a couple minutes later, the drifter seemed to have disappeared into thin air and was nowhere to be seen or found. Washington, who sincerely thought at first this was possibly a crippled homeless man, was startled to say the least and later said of it all, quote, I felt so sorry for him and wanted to help if I could, so I turned the car around. Although it took me only 2 or 3 minutes to get turned around, he was long gone. He was so wild and strange looking with an obvious disfigurement of the leg that I can't imagine anyone picking him up. I can't explain it, but he appeared lost, end quote. Jerry Coleman collected at least 11 sightings of the so-called road troll between 1981 and 2003 and spanning all across the 5 states of Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, Illinois, and Texas. It was seen other places too, but those were the main states. All of the witnesses who came forward, despite being completely independent of one another, described pretty much the exact same man or creature exactly the same way. The witnesses were for the most part considered to be reasonable and reliable people who weren't prone to telling tall tales of such things, so this begs the question, what in the world is it that these people had seen and witnessed? What are people getting a glimpse of when they come across this mysterious entity? Could it be just an oddly large, dirty, and crippled homeless man who traverses these particular highways and roads on a never-ending journey to who knows where? The places seem so far-flung, and it's rather odd to me indeed that almost all of the witnesses had described this quote-unquote person as, quote, not being human, end quote, in one way or another. Some people believe these witnesses have actually seen the big man himself. Bigfoot, I mean. But do I really need to explain why that doesn't make much sense? Okay, maybe it could be a bit of a trucker urban legend passed down from one generation to the next. But please keep in mind we have a housewife and even a pastor, a man of God, who came forward with their encounters. What reason would those two have to perpetuate this type of legend? Jerry Coleman says it this way, quote, if one insists on sticking to their theory of drivers seeing road trolls due to hallucinations, then address this next question. How is it that even some short-run drivers that have just begun their trip, which are well-rested and drug-tested, have seen and reported these road trolls? But more importantly, how would the skeptics explain away such cases as the mother of two headed to the mall or the pastor going to a church gathering, both who claim an encounter with a road troll? These latter are average citizens out on what they thought to be an average trip, end quote. He even posits that it could be some sort of mystical or mythical creature which serves as either a protector against or an omen of some sort of misfortune. Could this thing's appearance be purposeful? Could it be that perhaps the slowing down to catch a better look or speeding up to get away from it could each in its own way be some sort of catalyst for preventing one accident or another that was to befall the witness had they not come across this pathetic fellow? I mean, if I'm being honest here and knowing what I know about the Fae, trolls are Fae, guys, just saying, then I would say this makes the most sense to me because they always, they being the Fae, always have a purpose when showing themselves to humans, and the pastor's encounter where it wasn't there anymore when he went back to be of some sort of assistance to it lets me know that it isn't for anything nefarious, or it would have struck then, wouldn't it? Jerry Coleman also says, quote, perhaps it is an unknown entity of our mind, an unexplained homo anomalous with little purpose, playing cosmic games, or with a lot of purpose changing fate to those who see it. Does the witness think they are seeing something, thus stimulating or alerting these drivers back to reality where their minds may have drifted from the task at hand, or as in Barb in the pastor's case, an obvious detour in the direct path of travel, possibly delaying them and others, avoiding an accident, waiting around the next curve of changeable fate, end quote. And that's pretty much what I had stated, was that I believe that maybe like the slowing down when people stop to get a better look and they're like slowing down to stare at it, or people speeding up like, heck no, I want to get away from it. Is that changing the rate of speed at which they're traveling and therefore preventing some kind of future accident? I chose these cases not because they are the most believable, and in fact, I'll be the first to admit they're even somewhat obscure, but they're definitely interesting and they're not so well known. Whatever this thing is, it deserves to be looked at a bit more closely, and that's why I chose to bring it to your guys' attention. What is going on here? I love, and I know you guys do too, hearing about encounters from long-haul truckers all over the world, and I am currently looking into some more. It takes time because you guys know that I won't present anything to you at all, whether it be encounters or information or both, which I don't believe in 100%. So let me know in the comments what you think of this phenomenon. Is it down on his luck man? Is it perhaps a wounded and homeless veteran? A person with amnesia? Could it be Bigfoot or perhaps even the so-called missing link? Is it a fairy? Also, what purpose does it serve? Surely it isn't doomed to simply roam the highways and backroads of the United States in particular for all of eternity with no purpose whatsoever. Is there more than one, or is it ageless, perhaps even immortal? Again, is it a fairy? All of these questions and unfortunately no answers, but hey, at least we got some good encounters out of it. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up. Got to get those likes up, guys. And subscribe if you haven't already. Please spread the love by sharing this video. I'm trying to do better with getting to comments. I am so bad just because who I am as a human being with checking emails and getting back to comments. But I promise I'm going to try my very best to remember to start on that this week. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please go on over to MoonBearOracle, my other channel, and subscribe. I kind of changed the content just a little bit because I don't have time to do 12 additional intuitive oracle readings per month, one for each sign. But eventually I will get to monthly and weekly for each sign. If you'd like a personal, please email me at MoonBearOracle@gmail.com. That's a personal intuitive oracle reading, 7 to 12 to 15 cards. So I've pulled up to 22. I mean, it depends on where the reading goes. We can do it through Skype or I can do it remotely. Definitely want to check those out. I usually choose out of my Wednesday night live stream 1 or 2 people to email me additional information so I could read for them, and I don't charge them for that. So if you want to stop in to the Wednesday night stream, it starts at 7:15 p.m., ends at around 11 p.m. Eastern time. It's myself and usually my 17-year-old son, Damien. And I pull 1 card for every person that comes in and give you a weekly intuitive oracle read. Damien takes my list for me and we just chat and have a really, really great time. So if you haven't checked any of those out, please go back into the description box and look at it. I'm going to leave one there. Also, I am still a part of Paranormal Chop Shop. That is my channel as much as it is Sunny's and Chad's and Jake's and Papa Willie's. We're kind of all a big mesh over there and we have so much fun. Mesh, not mess. I haven't been able to get there because of time constraints and things that are going on with me personally, but I'm trying to set something up with Sunny to do like an interview type show or whatever, where he and I can get together, possibly with Chad and Jake and whoever else. So go on over to Paranormal Chop Shop and subscribe over there too. You'll be doing me a huge favor, and plus you'll have an amazing, amazing time. Okay, so my phone just completely blacked out. I have no idea what happened, but I think I was saying go on over to Paranormal Chop Shop. They start at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Friday nights. You may catch me there, but again, Sunny and I are trying to set something up. I want to do a show with interviewing people, so I got my own StreamYard and Damien's helping me. So anyway, Saturday and Sunday nights, you can find me on Spaced Out Radio with Big Willie Townsend and the fedora-wearing John Hudson, where we ride the woo train. We drive the woo train, pick you guys up along the way, all aboard for the woo. We own the night right here on YouTube on Spaced Out Radio. Guys, please go on over and show your love on MoonBear. I'm starting the channel up. It is a slow going process with everything else that I have going on. Remember, I am head writer for the channel Missing Persons and Mysteries. I write a lot. I used to write the majority of their stuff. Now there's a few more writers coming in there, but still, check out Missing Persons and Mysteries. Steve Stockton's the narrator, Bill Meldrew, the creator, doing amazing things. Also, just about to start working on the 3rd book, Shadow People Beyond the Sleep Paralysis Demon. Yay! Speaking of books, you can check out in the description box on Amazon the links for the paperback and Kindle version of my first book, Missing the Fae Theory by Gemma Jade. If you want a signed or autographed copy, please email me at GemmaJadeParanormal before making the purchase. If you'd like to make a donation to the channel, PayPal, Cash App, Patreon, and Amazon wishlist gift links also in the description box. That phone blinking out totally made me forget what I was saying. Be kind to each other, guys. If I forgot anything, I'm sorry. It doesn't cost anything to be a kind, decent human being. Also, make sure you're being kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I will see you next time.